James, CEO and founder of Currensea. Great to have you on the Blackfinch Ventures Fearless Founders Series.
Well, thank you very much indeed for having me.
And we're excited because this is a recent investment of ours through the EIS and VCT. But if you can cast your mind back to the very beginning, so the origin story of Currensea, tell us how it all began.
I mean, this goes back a little way when I was frustrated by going abroad and being charged bank fees. And I was being charged 3 or 4% by my bank. And I tried some other products from other challenger banks and prepay cards, but I found they all had the same problem, which is I had to transfer money in advance, I had to keep track of a balance, I had to keep topping it up all the time, and inevitably I forgot to top it up and had my card declined and had those magic moments of foraging around for Wi-Fi, trying to top it up, just all too painful. So those cards ended up in the back of my drawer. I continue using my bank card and being charged fees and moaning about it. And my co-founder and I had a bit of experience in foreign exchange and open banking and things like this. And so we came up with an idea and a vision to come up with a debit card that connects to an existing high street bank account, but just wipes out the fees. So removing all that inconvenience, those problems around topping up and prepaying and all that sort of stuff, just a really simple product with a simple USP that just worked. So we came up with that vision, and that's what we did.
And it all relied on open banking, and it was a very elegant use of the open banking standard, if I remember. But tell us about how that all works.
Yeah, I mean, so open banking changed quite a lot in terms of regulation, in terms of opening up competition for banks and the financial sector, really with a view to benefiting consumers. So yes, we were able to effectively build something on top of existing high street banks. So we know that most people don't really change their high street bank accounts. They may open up secondary accounts, but people don't really change. So this is all around enabling people to add value-added services on top of those. And so we were able to use open banking to do that in a way that no one had ever been able to do before. So it was challenging. It was very challenging indeed when you're blazing a whole new trail, and whether that's with the regulators, the FCA, or with MasterCard, when people haven't done something before, there are challenges in terms of even boxes to be ticked. Does someone fit in that box or that box? So there are challenges. But we got through it, working with both of those parties together, and ended up with, I think, what's a good result.
So you built the product. You were starting to answer this difficult question of how to save on all those fees when you go away traveling with your normal bank. And then COVID came along. Not great timing, was it?
COVID was not the best timing. It wasn't at the top of my risk register before we kicked off. It wasn't an anticipated event. So yeah, it wasn't helpful. And there were times when we thought we may have got the wrong product at that particular time. So it was difficult, very difficult. But I think the key thing in those sorts of scenarios is to always look on the positive side of things and figure out what the strategy is going to be. I think there's no point in just rolling over and accepting defeat. It's okay, we've got a problem here. What do we do about it? Do we change? Do we pivot? Do we dig deep in terms of enhancing the product? What do we do?
And the thing is, what we see from the investment side is when founders are able to get through those situations with the kind of grit and the resilience, it's a really good signal about the team. So you took it from there, and then the impact of COVID started to wear off, and people were starting to travel more, weren't they? And what did you see kind of happen?
And that was the key thing for us. So we had a launch window just before COVID, and we'd seen those sort of glimmers of a real promise right at the beginning where people were excited by it. But those summers where it started to wear off and people were traveling again, that was when it really got exciting, because that's when we saw the card numbers really starting to take off. And even though a limited number of people were traveling, those people that were traveling were loving the product, and they were referring the product and taking out the product. And we were able to get that into people's hands at a relatively low cost, largely because they enjoyed it so much. So actually that was a real sort of glimmer of promise. And frustratingly, it kept on being stolen away at the end of the summer when another COVID round hit. But we could see we were on something really quite special there.
But so if you had to summarise then to someone that didn't know what Currensea was today, just in a nutshell, what is Currensea?
It's a very simple product for saving fees when you travel abroad using a card. Simple as that. There is no need for a new bank account or a prepay account or anything like that. It's just a different debit card that works with your existing bank and removes bank fees. Very, very simple.
everyone's a winner. And then talk to us about the other side to it, because I mean that alone is a very compelling proposition, but there's the kind of affinity side as well, isn't there?
Yeah, so right from the beginning, we wanted to do something good alongside just a simple business model. So we started right at the start by letting people give back a portion of their bank fee savings to planting trees and taking plastic bottles out of the ocean. We've now actually taken 1.75 million bottles out of the ocean. Actually, it's a huge number. So we started doing that, and what we realised is that actually people really bought into this, as we hoped they would, and we wanted to go one step further. So we started actually working with a number of charities and letting charities issue branded cards directly out to their members, and then their members can opt to give back a portion of their bank fee savings to that charity. So if you have a lovely charity and they go to their members get a beautifully branded card, which is a really emotional connective thing for that individual. And when they go abroad, they use that card, and they have a setting in their app to say how much of their donations or how much of their fee savings they're going to donate back. And then every time they spend, they'll get an email or a push notification saying, you've just donated this, you've just donated that. And it's incredibly powerful and compelling sort of engagement for the individual. And it's a lovely way of charities getting a revenue stream back. And so I think, again, it's a situation where everyone wins. So we've started doing that, and we've got 9 charities on board now. We've got a pipeline of, I think last time I looked, on the 26 who are in the queue. It's a lot of charities. So it's pretty exciting on that thing. And that's just rolling and rolling. So a really exciting aspect.
Another great example of a tech for goods early stage company in the UK. Really good to see. And so I'm sure you've had many different challenges over the period, COVID, aside, probably the most difficult one. But apart from that, what would you say has been one of the biggest challenges you've had that you've had to overcome?
I think it was ultimately deciding, when we first started around just looking at a simple, plain business model of the foreign exchange card. We got asked the question by someone, so are you just going to be FX card guys? And we sort of thought about that, because that was why we'd set the business up in the first place. And at that point, there was a sort of head-scratching moment where it was like, well, actually we have these sort of far broader visions, but we hadn't really crystallised them. And so I think it's taking something from where your initial USP is and where your initial vision was, and then going for a far, far broader, but crystallising that in a way that everyone can understand it and really start figuring out what you mean, what you're actually aiming for. And so I think crystallising that and figuring out, okay, our next stage is looking at our affinity cards, and then our longer term vision of being able to open the product out and let more people use it, as opposed to just charities, but going far broader and letting bigger partners be part of that platform as well. So I think it was a challenge in terms of going from our initial vision, and this isn't necessarily a pivot, this is more an extension, but it's the challenge of thinking about, okay, how do we go from there to this far bigger picture? So I think that was an interesting challenge.
And you've got to have real conviction, haven't you, to make those bold decisions and focus down, but it's ultimately essential, isn't it, on the journey of a startup?
Yeah, I think so. And I think if we'd have had everything sewn up right from the beginning, I'd been amazed. But as we went along, it's a combination of feedback from people and hearing people's views and have you thought of doing this and have you thought of doing that? And I think the key is taking all those sort of suggestions on board and sort of thinking, actually, these are ways we can go. There are so many opportunities that you can do as a startup, and it's just a question of which are the ones to pick and which of the ones make sense in a sort of cohesive strategy.
And you've been supported by some of the biggest names in the finance world, haven't you, really? Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so right from the start, we created the product with MasterCard and the FCA working together. And it was a really exciting position for us to be in, because MasterCard had never really worked that way with the FCA sandbox before. And doing that in parallel with both organisations and sort of pulling that together it was a privilege, absolute privilege to be able to work with them like that. But then MasterCard have supported us all the way through on the journey. They're incredibly good as a partner, understanding the potential of what we've created. And ultimately they can see that we've created a way of issuing debit cards without the need for a current account. And the potential that opens up becomes vast. So they're an incredibly supportive partner to us. And we became a MasterCard principal member right from the start. And they've been with us all the way through the journey. And we're really happy to call them our good friends, actually.
It's certainly one of the most brilliant uses we've seen of open banking, actually, and we've seen a lot of fintech startups come through the door. But if you reflect now back to that origin story, where you started from and where you are today, what can you tell us about the kind of growth that you've gone through over that time?
I mean, I think the most interesting moments are looking at this year's growth and looking at benchmarking last summer to this summer. And I was just looking at the numbers this morning, actually. And from both of those, from last summer to this summer, or from January this year to this summer, our volumes grew by over 500%. So I think that's quite a nice growth story. Again, it shows from the beginning of the year when we're sort of post-COVID, just coming out of it, but also a peak summer last year where people were starting to travel again to where we are now. It shows people are enjoying the product and they're spending with it. So it's a nice number.
The value proposition is very well defined now, isn't it? And so if you cast your eye now to the next 4, 5, 6 months, without giving away too much, what exciting steps do you think you have on the horizon?
I mean, I think there are a number of product-focused steps, and there are some obvious types of things we can say. Things like looking at Apple Pay and Google Pay and these sorts of things, sort of virtual cards. So there's some exciting things there. But also, I think some of the most exciting things for me are all around partnerships and who we're working with and who we're helping to bring really exciting products to the market. So powered by Currensea, but with different twists for either perhaps different charities or other different businesses. And I think we'll start seeing some really exciting things coming through and some business ideas coming out of that. So watch this space.
And if you cast your eye even further into the future, say 5 years' time, where do you think Currensea is going to be then?
I mean, we have clear aspirations for Currensea to become a global product. There is no reason why we can't change the face of the debit card market worldwide. So we're offering cards which help individuals in various ways. It'll either help them save money on FX, it'll help them save money on other things, on domestic spend, it'll help them to donate to their charities. But it's always doing something positive. So actually, putting out cards like that on a global basis with a vast array of partners, that's where I see it going. So caring cards, I think we could call it, but across the globe, because in terms of the potential for us scaling, there's very little limit to it. And the conversations we've been having so far, we can see there is demand for it. So we're really excited about that prospect.
Well, we're very excited to be part of the journey and we'll be supporting as much as we possibly can. But James, CEO and founder of Currensea, great to have you on the Blackfinch Ventures Fearless Founders Series. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Great to be here.